Many puzzling ancient artifacts have been discovered all over the globe, and some of them have never been fully explained by scientists. Hundreds of these intriguing, mysterious relics were secretly stored after being discovered, never to be seen again. There are also plenty curious artifacts that have simply vanished, never to be mentioned again. These are some of the more mysterious artifacts that slipped through the net. The mystery of the London artifact always creates heated debates between creationists and Darwinists. So what is it? The London artifact is an iron hammer that's surrounded by a solid mass of Cretaceous rock. The handle of the hammer is made of wood and it's partially petrified. It was discovered in London, Texas. In June 1936, Max and Emma Hahn were walking along Red Creek near their home in London, Texas, when they spotted a rock nodule with a piece of wood sticking out of it. Sometime later, their son George broke it open, and this revealed a metal hammer in the center of the rock nodule to which the wooden handle was attached. So, what are we to make of this extraordinary fossil? Well, tests have shown that the hammer is made of iron. The metal hammerhead is approximately 6 inches long and has a diameter of 1 inch, leading some to suggest that this hammer was not used for large projects, but rather for fine work or soft metal. The metal of the hammerhead has been confirmed to consist of 96.6% iron, 2.6% chlorine, and 0.74% sulfur. The hammerhead is still not rusted since its discovery in the 1930s.
One of the more intriguing of those artifacts is the London artifact, a hammer. This hammer was discovered in June 1936. It is in rock, hard concretionary rock, that is assigned an age of 140 million years.
In fact, the quality of that iron equals or exceeds the quality of any iron found in the model world. Now, how in the world is that possible? The rock in which the tool was found trapped in was determined to be over 400 million years old. The question was then posed as to how a tool, obviously made or at least used by man, could be found in a rock dated so old when man himself has only been known to exist for roughly 200,000 years. The details boggled conventional history. The hammer began to attract wider attention after it was bought by creationist Carl Bow in 1983, who claimed the artifact was a monumental pre-flood discovery. He's used it as the basis of speculation of how the atmospheric quality of pre-flood Earth must have encouraged the growth of giants. The hammer is now an exhibit in Bow's Creation Evidence Museum. The truth is that evolutionists and creationists will continue to fight about this artifact until the end of time. But for those who choose to take an objective look at things, the reality is that this is an extraordinary, out-of-place fossil. Could this be a hammer from the world that existed before Noah's flood? Nobody knows for certain. It remains one of the world's great mysteries. In 1938, Chipu Te, a professor of archaeology at Beijing University, was leading some students on an expedition to survey a series of caves in the Himalayan mountains. The caves seemed to have been artificially carved and were more like a complex system of tunnels and underground storerooms. The walls were squared and glazed as if cut into the mountain with a source of extreme heat. Inside the caves were several ancient burial sites, and in them the skeletal remains of a strange people. The skeletons, measuring a little more than 4 feet tall, were frail with disproportionately large skulls. What kind of human was this? More discoveries made further in the caves all but ruled out the idea that these were apes. On the walls were carved pictograms of the heavens, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the earth, with lines of dots connecting them. Then the team made the most incredible discovery of all. Half buried in the dirt floor of the cave was an odd stone disc, obviously fashioned by the hand of an intelligent creature. The disc was approximately 9 inches in diameter and 3/4 of an inch thick. In the exact center was a perfectly round 3/4-inch hole, and etched in its face was a fine groove spiraling out from the center to the rim, making the disc look for all the world like some kind of primitive phonograph record. One plate was dated to between 10,000 and 12,000 years old, older than the pyramids of Egypt. This incredible discovery was multiplied when even more discs were discovered. In all, 716 such plates were found, and each held an incredible secret. The groove, upon further inspection, was not a groove at all, but a continuous line of strange carved hieroglyphics, writing. The tiny, almost microscopic characters were in a language never encountered before. In 1965, 716 more groove stone discs were uncovered in the same caves. Dr. Sum Nui was able to decode the language. They told the story of a space probe by the inhabitants of another planet who came to the Bayakara-Ula mountain range. They'd crash-landed. They referred to themselves as Dropas. When placed on a special turntable, they vibrated or hummed in an unusual rhythm, as though an electric charge was passing through them. It's as if they formed some part of an electrical circuit. These discs are another of the world's great puzzles. Piri Reis Map. The Piri Reis Map was found in 1929 in the Imperial Palace in Constantinople. It's painted on parchment and dated to 909 AH in the Islamic calendar, which corresponds to 1513 AD. It's signed by an admiral of the Turkish Navy named Piri ibn Haji Mehmed, also known as Piri Reis. According to Piri Reis, the map had been assembled from a set of 20 maps drawn in the time of Alexander the Great. The map shows the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and the northern coast of Antarctica, ice-free. The northern coastline of Antarctica is perfectly detailed. The most puzzling fact, however, is not so much how the Piri Reis Antarctica map managed to be so accurate 300 years before it was discovered, but that the map shows the real coastline under the ice. Geological evidence confirms that the latest date Queen Maud Land could have been charted in an ice-free state is 4000 BC. One historian, Captain Lorenzo W. Burroughs, a U.S. Air Force captain with a background in cartography, claims that the depiction of Antarctica is accurate, and it looks precisely like the continent before it was covered in ice. Also, both Charles Hapgood and Graham Hancock claim that the representation of the Antarctic continent is incredibly precise. Professor Hapgood went on to state that the topographical representation of the area inland from the coast was so accurate that an ancient super-civilization had to have aerial capabilities in addition to their nautical and cartographic abilities. This naturally led to the theory of a civilization that has not yet been discovered, possibly one based on the lost city of Atlantis. For this to fit with the theory that a prehistoric civilization mapped the Antarctic coast where it's shown in the Piri Reis map, we'd have to place civilization much further back in time or learn something new about how Earth's crust shifts. Hapgood theorized that the Earth underwent a shift in its axis around 9,500 BC, which displaced Antarctica and moved it thousands of miles to the south, where it became covered in ice. In short, if you subscribe to the idea that this portion of the map is Antarctica without its ice cap, then you must believe an ancient civilization with advanced navigational skills existed and produced accurate maps of the globe. This mysterious map is dubbed the Impossible Map and will no doubt be debated over for many years to come. Beneath the city of Rockwall is a narrow row of hard mineral stones that appear to be stacked on top of one another, forming what looks like a rock wall. These discoveries have sparked debate between scientists and researchers for more than 160 years. The question is, was this rock wall built by prehistoric people, or is it a naturally occurring phenomenon? The rock formation has been documented in 11 separate locations surrounding and underneath Rockwall. A map archived by the Rockwall County Historical Foundation illustrates the spots where people have excavated the wall starting in 1852. There are portions of the wall that almost beg you to consider an alternate theory. Local accounts of an old newspaper reports from the early part of the last century document claims of steps and archways. One account from a family which dug along the wall as part of setting up their homestead described a corridor. Archive photos show what appears to be a form of drawing or writing on one of the rocks. One of the digs turned up a round metal disc made up of iron embedded in one of the stones. Many of the openings are in fact square and resemble windows or conduits for water. One lintel that was excavated and brought up from a water well in 1949 had what appeared to be an ancient script on it that's roughly in a straight line across the stone. What's more interesting is that a copper coin-like object found in cuttings from an augured water well in 1870 in Illinois at a depth of 125 feet had two humans portrayed on it and the exact same script etched around the edge of the object. Those copper objects, now at the Smithsonian, date from 200,000 to 400,000 years ago. Geologist James Shelton stated ancient people could have used cast stone, meaning a form of prehistoric cement that was formed into blocks. In support, Shelton noted that other megalithic sites across the ancient world were similarly constructed of cast stone. Count Byron de Prorock examined a portion of the feature in 1925. He concluded it was man-made. Local folklore has arisen that a race of prehistoric giants built the walls. A giant skull was discovered in Victoria County, Texas in 1940. The headline included, "Believed to be the largest ever found in the world." The article claimed that the skull was 2 times normal sized. It was also claimed that these enormous skulls were found at a site not too far away from the Rockwall. Are they connected? In 1996, author Bai Yu was traveling near Mountain Bygone, which sits about 25 miles southwest of the city of Dalinja in the Haixi Mongol and Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture in Qinghai Province, China. During his travels, he came across a 6-foot-deep triangular cave which seemed to be artificially dug. Intrigued, he ventured inside. There were 2 more caves near it, but they had collapsed. Upon entry, he made a discovery that would cause debate for years to come, as inside the cave he found what appeared to be an array of metal pipes with hollow centers that ran through the cave and protruded from its exterior wall or appeared to run all the way to a lake 260 feet away. Bai Yu discovered something extraordinary, or is there a plausible explanation for these pipe-like structures? Scientists have dubbed the bygone pipes out-of-place artifacts, or modern objects discovered in ancient settings. The ancient metal pipes appear to predate known history and are embedded into rock, precluding any theories that they were recent additions to the landscape. In another feat of sophisticated ancient engineering, the pipes lead through one of the nearby Himalayan foothills and connect to a salt lake. Scientists from the China Seismological Bureau visited the lake in 2001 to examine the pipes. Samples brought back to the Beijing Institute of Geology were examined by thermoluminescence dating, a technique that can determine how long it's been since a crystalline mineral was either heated or exposed to sunlight. The result came back that if these were indeed iron pipes that had been smelted, they were made 140 to 150,000 years ago. Analysis of the pipes shows that they were made mostly of iron with a 30% mixture of silicon dioxide and a hint of plant material mixed in. The material has been estimated to be up to 150,000 years old. One report says dozens of pipes have been found protruding from the rocks far above the caves, suggesting that the holes had to have been drilled so they could have been placed in the rock. But for what reason? The pipes are found in various sizes, ranging from 15 inches in diameter to what's been described as toothpick-sized at the thinnest. Because this discovery is a remote area in the heart of China, there's little more to report at this time about the bygone pipes. So until major excavation takes place and conclusive evidence can be found, the pipes will remain a mystery. Over the last few decades, miners in South Africa have been digging up mysterious metal spheres. Origin unknown, these spheres measure approximately an inch or so in diameter, and some are etched with 3 parallel grooves running around the equator. 2 types of spheres have been found. One is composed of solid bluish metal with flecks of white, the other is hollowed out and filled with a spongy white substance. The kicker is that the rock in which they were found is Precambrian and dated to 2.8 billion years old. Who made them and for what purpose is unknown. Rolf Marx. There's nothing scientific published about the globes, but the facts are they're found in pyrophyllite, which is mined near the little town of Ottosdal in the western Transvaal. This pyrophyllite is quite soft sedentary material with a count of only 3 on the Mohs scale and was formed by sedimentation about 2.8 billion years ago. On the other hand, the globes, which have a fibrous structure on the inside with a shell around it, are very hard and cannot be scratched, even by steel. It also seems that the spheres are so delicately balanced that even with modern technology, they would need to have been made in zero gravity. The story goes that scientists at NASA were totally flawed when they examined them and were unable to come up with any explanation. If the spheres were actually created and are of extreme ancient origin, then what could be their purpose? Could they be examples of an ancient currency? It's known that some ancient cultures used other objects rather than coins and paper as money. There is some speculation that they're connected in some way to Lepidus, a moon of Saturn which has unusual rings on its surface. Perhaps they're examples of ancient ammunition, which had either been stored or fired at their present location. Could they be an example of ancient art? Could they be a form of ancient records, information storage devices? It's the sphere with 3 parallel grooves around its equator that's most interesting. Even if it's conceded that the sphere itself is a limonite concretion, one still must account for these 3 parallel grooves. In the absence of a satisfactory natural explanation, the evidence is somewhat mysterious, leaving open the possibility that the South African grooved sphere, found in a mineral deposit 2.8 billion years old, was made by an intelligent being. The Turin shroud is a linen cloth bearing the image of a man who appears to have suffered physical trauma in a manner consistent with crucifixion, and is commonly associated with Jesus Christ. The shroud measures approximately 14.3 by 3.7 feet, and bears the faint, reddish-brown image of the front and back view of a naked man just under 6 feet tall, with a beard, mustache, and shoulder-length hair, with his hands folded across his groin. The origins of the shroud and its image are the subject of intense debate among scientists, theologians, historians, and researchers, and it continues to be one of the most studied and controversial artifacts in human history. Is the Shroud of Turin an authentic 1st century AD burial cloth of a Jesus Christ, or the work of a brilliant medieval European forger? Reports about the burial cloth of Jesus existed for centuries before the Shroud of Turin appeared in the medieval historical context. The Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke state that Joseph of Arimathea wrapped the body of Jesus in a piece of linen cloth and placed it in a new tomb. Christ's burial cloth was reportedly owned by the Byzantine emperors but disappeared during a sack of Constantinople in 1204. Criticisms have been raised regarding the choice of the sample taken for testing, with suggestions that the sample may represent a medieval invisible repair fragment rather than the image-bearing cloth. The cloud was damaged by a fire in a French chapel in 1532, and triangular patches were sewn onto the cloth by nuns to repair the burn holes. Carbon from the fire damage may have skewed the carbon dating by more than 1,000 years. German textile expert Mechthild Fury Lemberg found that a seam in the cloth corresponds to a fabric found at the fortress of Masada near the Dead Sea, which dated to the 1st century and is consistent with 1st century Syrian design. Neither X-ray fluorescence examination nor infrared thermology has detected any pigment. Chemists John Heller and Alan Adler identified the reddish stains as blood and interpreted the iron oxide as a natural residue of hemoglobin. Forensic pathologist Pierluigi Biama-Bellone later identified the blood as belonging to group AB, a common type among Middle Eastern people but fairly rare among medieval Europeans. Whether you accept the Shroud of Turin as the genuine burial cloth of Jesus Christ or believe it to be the artistic work of some medieval genius, it's a remarkable artifact which modern science can't completely explain. The Voynich Manuscript has been dubbed the most mysterious manuscript in the world. This manuscript codex dates to the early 15th century. Possibly created in northern Italy, it's named after the book dealer Wilfrid Voynich, who purchased it in 1912. Some pages are missing, but there are now about 240 vellum pages, most with illustrations. Its size is 23.5 centimeters by 16.2 centimeters by 5 centimeters. Much of the manuscript resembles herbal manuscripts of the 1500s, seeming to present illustrations and information about plants and their possible uses for medical purposes. However, most of the plants do not match known species, and the manuscript script and language remains unknown. Possibly some form of encrypted ciphertext, the Voynich Manuscript has been studied by many professional and amateur cryptographers, including American and British codebreakers from both World War I and World War II. It's defied all decipherment attempts, becoming a famous case of historical cryptology. The mystery surrounding it has excited the popular imagination, making the manuscript a subject of both fanciful theories and novels. None of the many speculative solutions proposed over the last 100 years has yet been independently verified. The Voynich Manuscript was donated to Yale University Bennecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library in 1969, where it's cataloged under call number MS-408 and called a cipher manuscript. While the media regularly reports that someone has finally cracked the code, none of the claims have so far stood up to scrutiny. Recently, it's claimed the manuscript had been decoded by artificial intelligence, except, of course, it hasn't. Not at all. According to experts, the Voynich Manuscript remains as inscrutable as ever. We may never fully understand all the messages, some easy to discern while others resemble allegory, making them subjective to the reader. Many of the images follow basic iconography found in other ancient texts. The history of the manuscript takes us to alchemy, creation, and the way the world appeared to the author hundreds of years ago. I believe one man wrote the book over many years, if not decades, to explain his theory of the way the universe works, as well as being used as a healing tool, all of which remain the fundamental foundations to answers we seek in the 21st century. The secrecy and cryptic aspects make it fascinating. Wherever your journey is taking you, there will be some message in the book. One of America's greatest and yet little-known enigmas, there are several reasons why Waffle Rock is considered a mystery. The geometric patterns are so regular that it's difficult to believe they were the work of nature. If it not a natural phenomenon, It would mean that it was perhaps created by an ancient civilization with help of highly sophisticated, unknown technology. Over the years, the Waffle Rock's origin and creation has been the subject of many theories. Speculations range from the impressions of the skin pattern of a giant reptile to evidence of space travelers on Earth. Others, mainly among the professional community, will explain it as a natural geological formation. They do admit such formations are quite rare. The only other similar patterned rock was found on the east side of Tea Creek Mountain in Pocahontas County, West Virginia. Dr. Jack B. Epstein of the Geological Survey, U.S. Department of the Interior, writes that the rock comes from part of the Conemaugh geologic series that was deposited about 300 million years ago, during the Pennsylvanian period. He surmises it fell from a parent outcrop somewhere higher up the slope, much higher. Geologists believe sand was deposited by ancient streams and later consolidated into hard rock or sandstone. Such sandstone and layers of rock, both above and below, were thrown into large folds during Earth's period of mountain building, known as the Appalachian orogeny. Another possibility that cannot be dismissed is that the Waffle Rock is not of natural origin, but rather a man-made creation. If so, what tools or machines were used to create such amazingly perfect patterns? The origin of the Waffle Rock remains a mystery. Depending on who you ask, you get different answers about its creation. Supporters of the ancient astronaut theory will say it could be considered proof of prehistoric alien visitations. Alternative historians would suggest an unknown civilization created the patterns with sophisticated technology. Geologists will say it's a natural formation. The verdict is still out there, and it's up to you to judge for yourself. A part of the original Waffle Rock was moved when Jennings-Randolph Lake was created by the building of a dam. A smaller piece of the same rock is also on display in the Smithsonian Institute of Natural History, located in Washington, D.C. Number 11. Roman Dodecahedrons. The mystery of the Roman dodecahedra are well documented. These typically bronze objects have been found in multiple locations across what was once the Roman Empire. Their visual appearance is striking, and as the old saying goes, a picture tells 1,000 words. In the case of the dodecahedrons, a picture is a much more succinct way to show their appearance. Some of the Roman dodecahedrons are basic in design. Some have patterns and markings on them. A dodecahedron found in Germany has circular grooves around the holes on the faces. Whether they're decorative or functional is another mystery that these ancient Roman artifacts offer up to us as simple questions. The size of the Roman dodecahedrons is deceptively small. When looking at photos, it's hard to gauge the scale. The dodecahedrons are small enough to fit into the palm of your hand and were typically anything from 2 to 5 inches in diameter. The Roman dodecahedrons have been found in many locations in Europe, but all where are some point involved with the Roman Empire. There's been anywhere from 60 to 100 examples found to date. Due to their unique appearance, non-obvious usage, and the fact that there's no documentation or notes about them from their time of creation, the Roman dodecahedrons have long been discussed in regard to their actual usage. We have some of the more common theories listed here, but of course they're just that, theories, and it's quite likely we may never know what the dodecahedrons were created for. One measurement theory is that the dodecahedrons would be a range measuring object. This could explain the different size holes in the pentagrams. Maybe they were used on the battlefield for judging projectile attacks on the Roman opposition. Finger measurement is another theory presented by some. The different gauge holes could represent different finger sizes, but this theory is also unproven. Other mentions have said the artifact could be used by ancient Roman plumbers who would use the dodecahedron to accurately measure pipe width. Some theorists have stated that the dodecahedrons could be some tying device, with the knots being used to tie ropes, maybe even used in the construction of tents. Many have attempted to solve their riddle. Historians, scientists, and everyone who sees the Roman dodecahedron will have their own idea of what these fascinating Roman artifacts may have been created for, But for now, no one has figured out what these puzzling artifacts are. The Plain of Jars is a group of fields containing thousands of stone jars cut from rocks thousands of years ago. The sites are located around the city of Phon Savan in Yankuang Province, northeast Laos. While some of the sites contain just a few jars, others contain hundreds, many of which are broken or have fallen over. The history of the stone jars is shrouded in mystery. The jars are believed to be about 2,000 years old. They came in varying sizes up to 3 meters high, weighing up to several tons. Most of them were sculpted from sandstone rock. Several theories and legends exist about the purpose of the jars. Local legend tells that they were made by a race of giants to use as cups to drink rice wine. Another story tells the jars were used to store water for the dry season, or a king had the jars made to store rice wine after a military victory. Signs of the secret war are clearly visible at several of the sites, in the form of bomb craters and damaged jars. During the Vietnam War, enormous quantities of bombs were dropped on Laos, many of which failed to explode. Although clearing works of unexploded bombs have been carried out at the most visited sites, it's strongly recommended to stay within the marked paths. Archaeologists have documented about 200 rather mysterious stone discs around the jar fields. They range in sizes but are generally no more than 3 feet wide. Many of them are pancake-shaped, but others are more like button mushrooms. A small number of discs exhibited a relief carving of a human, animal, or concentric circles. It's been argued that the larger discs were not used as lids to the open-air vessels, since many of them were not the same sizes as the jar openings. However, she does mention that the rounder, smaller stones that are buried in the ground are lids to clay burial pots. To add to the mystery of the discs, it's odd that the number of discs is only 1/10 the number of jars in the two provinces. There's widespread speculation but no conclusive answers about the purpose of the jars. One theory proposes that they were distillation containers for human bodies. A counter-argument against this theory indicates that many of the stone containers did not have internal areas large enough to contain a whole human body. What then did the people do with the jars that had small openings? Thanks for watching this documentary. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.